You ever play one of those games with a checkered field and little soldiers running around? Because it's been a while for me, and I think it's a bit odd. These games used to fit in the tiny screens we bruised our eyes on, games you could melt the time with because it wasn't all about spectacle or action, though I think you'd be surprised by what they could do. No, it was about the characters, the stories, the conflict, the strife, something you could feel, filtered through pixels, and a little shelling. So we're talking TRPGs, srpgs, hold on, which one is it? Part of the problem I run into talking about these games is the genre label. Somehow, no matter how different the gameplay, whether characters are involved or not, whether RPG elements exist at all, it's always srpg, TRPG, and I'm just sick of it. The common universal term is TBT, turn-based tactics, and to be clear, TRPGs are mostly what I'm talking about, but these words end up used interchangeably online, and honestly, I don't really care what you call them. I don't play them for the label. For me, it's the war story genre, and I'm not talking Call of Duty. That's just action movies gone game and pulp war tripe. So, a super brief history of srpg games. People have been putting things on squares forever. Chess is older than dust, but it took until the 70s for some guy to make a popular war game called Chainmail that was played and eventually found lacking until Gary Gygax stapled the RPG elements onto it, more or less. And what better tabletop model to cop for the gamers? Everyone loves war, everyone loves weapons. Now, squares may not be a friendly shape according to graphic designers, but you can make games with them. So a parade of discombobulated nonsense burst onto the scene. Seriously, what is this, you ask, and I whisper in return, it's art. Until we arrive at Fire Emblem. From then on, the genre was, generally speaking, about characters you grew to love, that you invested in, where story and scenarios were considered alongside gameplay during design. And I know about 1% of you are thinking, okay, but Advance Wars isn't about that, but like, give me a minute. There's this sweet little golden age where these games flourished. Developers were pushing what they could do with a game's story with rendering techniques and cameras, but whatever, we got Final Fantasy Tactics. Big names slapped on an ambitious package. This game is still the GOAT for many TRPG enthusiasts today, even among those who played the sequels. And why shouldn't it be, okay? Girl gets captured, boom, blame yourself or God. Damn. Raw as a dog. It had a learning curve, no doubt, but surprisingly snappy gameplay really allowed the player to mine the depths of the RPG till they broke the fault line, or, you know, die in a random battle, your call. Where it made the most significant leap was plot, which dumps the player into a complex situation about as ceremoniously as flicking into Game of Thrones partway through with no context. It's shocking and entertaining in equal measure, has the balls to tell a story of power politics and unchecked ambitions, while sympathetically portraying the abused and disenfranchised. For every magical moment, there's a grounding counterweight. According to Yasumi Matsuno, the game's writer, the powerful display of class consciousness the game embodies originated in the office, where longtime employees made the younger ones wonder if they had a future in the business. So I guess dreams of open comrade Matsuno will have to wait. But it's not to say FFT was the first class-conscious TRPG, just that its story is done well, very entertaining, that and Big Papa Thunder. Because 6 months earlier, a once-known game called Vandal Hearts hit the PS1 with stylized sprites, chunky blows, fat splatters, and a flagrantly angry tale of upper-class power abuse and corruption. And it's all framed sympathetically, really gets you pissed off watching these sneering warbucks f***s whip their money to the working class. I'm getting upset. Of course, Vandal Hearts and FFT used rich graphical styles to enhance gameplay alongside environmental interaction, and both put class changing to good use, but neither said, okay, what if you could change your character's arms? Enter Front Mission, which hit the scene a year before Vandal Hearts. It's an old SNES affair with illustrations straight from God, straight from Yoshitaka Amano himself. Don't tell me it looks weird in a mech game, just pipe down. Front Mission was cool for leaning into the character building in an entirely new way. Naturally, it told its story of war and revenge, and I think it's interesting how old TRPGs often used Western aesthetics and settings despite coming from Japan, but I think more people are interested in slapping parts on a frame, and dude, you can paint them different colors? Different colors though? Alright, let's do this. And they were all good, these games, because they nailed some or all of the best features the genre had to offer. Characters to care about and construct. Enough depth of gameplay between environmental decisions and character actions. Stories that either made you say, damn, wow, or that was drawn by Yoshitaka Amano. Huh. And in these particular cases, the use of isometric perspective to lend visual dynamism to an otherwise static-looking genre. But all told, the TRPG moved on without becoming a mainstay of AAA gaming, regulated to enthusiasts enthusiasts, connoisseurs, INTJs, and everyone knows what they say about INTJs. As the genre grew up, it found itself spread thin on tons of handhelds and in the hands, increasingly, of young people. There's a visible shift away from class-based and racialized political stories and a lot more fluff conflict, though admittedly some holdouts maintain the traditions. Eventually, a whole new era of turn-based tactics games emerged that started challenging the assumptions and improving on the formulas, innovating in neat ways, just outright complicating things. And I happen to care a lot about the additions and nerdy things, like, isn't Valkyria Chronicles and its fully 3D environment so sick? This guy's stupid damage and tricks, just such a breath of fresh air. And do not forget Gungnir. Oh, on top of a million other noteworthy experiences, but I know the average game fan doesn't care. And I know that because of intelligent systems. It turns out certain aspects of the genre taken to extremes might bite ballsack, actually. Intelligent Systems is famous for Fire Emblem and was famous for Advance Wars. Advance Wars is not a TRPG, there are no level ups or equipment, just raw unit production, income management, unit matchups, and turf wars. Sure, they spice it up with special abilities and unique characters, but that really is it in terms of relating to the TRPG genre and why I sneakily include it using the phrase turn-based tactics. It always weasels into discussion about the golden age of GBA Fire Emblem because they came out alongside one another, are both effectively strategy games, and were made by the same company. Worth noting is that Famicom Wars, Advance Wars' progenitor, and its distinct lack of characters to care about seems to be what led the team to create Fire Emblem in the first place. It's not to say they didn't try, just the game isn't going for a war story, you know? If anything, it's a kidification of wars. Some characters appear to be actual children or teenagers, but placed in command of platoons, companies, whatever, people who fight and die over the course of battles, but it's okay, they just wackily blow away. Not to mention the personalities like deranged, childish goth girl, Sergeant Oingo Boingo Man. Nothing about this speaks to war or human conflict meaningfully, and hey, it's for a younger audience, but the gameplay isn't a joke. Advance Wars is honestly pretty incredible as far as the gameplay experience goes. It's tight, it's rewarding, there is no feeling like choking your opponent out of resources and taking all their crap, and it's reflected in the review scores. Advance Wars games do so well with outlets, but when it comes to sales, they flounder. It's tragic, but I think it's pretty obvious why. You can fill up a roster with colorful designs and unique abilities, stock appealing pixel assets for days. Gamers, by and large, do not care about how tight a gameplay experience is. We'd have loads more fighter players, way more critics of certain 10 out of 10 games, way more indie gaming fans. People want to sit down and experience something that appeals to them, whether that's their favorite fictional setting, or Leather Boys, or paying full retail for the latest and greatest. There are fucking mountains of games that blow chunks, that drag for ages, that just don't play well, but it will never matter if the games pander effectively. Fire Emblem. It's a personal sore spot for me because there was a time when Smash fans would moan about Fire Emblem characters and I'd be pissed because, hey, shut up and try something other than lumpy dumbass jumps between platforms, huh? Somehow, in time, I've swayed to their side. I remember the GBA Emblem games best, and they were simple but effective. They had beautiful assets too, characters for days, and you had to be deliberate about who to level up from these enormous rosters. You'd restart whole levels if your favorite died because permadeath was a thing. The gameplay is, in retrospect, a lot of dudes moving into other dudes and attacking with very few tricks and tactics available, but Gungnir doesn't have a GBA port, alas. What really made me like Fire Emblem though was the conversations, not the story, which was always vaguely political and invariably dark magic influenced. And to this day, some of those text boxes are the most memorable parts of the games. You'd have a drifter with no real care for his existence talking to a focused family man only in the fight for his wife, and it felt human, believable. And even when it wasn't down to earth, it could spur genuine feelings. There's this conversation between the two thieves in FE7 that begins with one's distrust of the other being a defector from the player army's major opposing faction, and we watch him unfold his story and conversation. The short tale of traitor killer gone soft once his superiors changed, became ruthless, and asked him to murder a wounded comrade who'd never fight again. I know it's a short sample, and yes, some of them are played to comedic effect, but by and large, the conversations are substantive, honest looks into the lives of people who could plausibly exist. And they were so hard to unlock, even if you were working for it, you'd often have to take more turns than usual to complete maps just to read the things. Like Adam Driver, some things are appealing due in part to their exclusivity. Unfortunately for Fire Emblem, its sales were good, but maybe not quite good enough. There was a time, if you can remember it, when Fire Emblem was not the Nintendo flagship series it is today, floating somewhere above or around Custom Robo and Golden Sun, you know, the cool kids club. Though it had Japanese market longevity and recognition on its side, it only needed a strong Western breakthrough. Path of Radiance? Not so much. Radiant Dawn? Come on. Guys, Ike was cool. He wasn't some royal. He walked up, dude called him a subhuman, and he said, cool. But what is that? What the f is that? What's happening? Awakening and Fates were total smash hits on the 3DS. I've played both of these through a couple times, had my fun. They're really solid content engines, tons of DLC support, lots to do, lots of romance, just lots. Say what you'd like, and I'm really happy for you, but Fire Emblem realized, likely, that one reason its games weren't selling was low mass appeal. Not everyone likes waiting around for 20 years for the enemy AI to finish their turn. So what if what if those fantastic conversations were streamlined and plentiful and largely unrestricted between characters? What if you could have adult babies and control their hair color? Awakening and Fates both put character relations at the forefront above raw quality gameplay, and I'm speaking of two games whose hardest difficulties are known to be trivial with a little mechanical exploitation. It was unbelievably easy to unlock conversations, to max out a given pair of characters' support level, and that wouldn't be a problem if half of it wasn't total f***ing nonsense. I'm sorry, I've been holding this in for years. Some of Awakening and Fate's characters are generally well written or at least inoffensive. Some of them feel like they could be real at least half of the time. On the whole, however, every single character can be reduced to a single word, an idea, a gimmick. Noble, childish, stern, training, aristocrat, himbo, nerd, clumsy, quiet, childish, aristocrat, Russian, stalker, psychopath, candy? They're paper. Kellemhere's gimmick is he's a big burly knight, but no one can see him because he lacks presence. That's one hell of a high concept gimmick, and they will never stop using it as a crutch in conversations. Gaius likes candy, and you better believe he'll mention it in as many supports as humanly possible. They're so one-dimensional, so ridiculous that when you find even one serious conversation that isn't tainted by the writer screaming a character's gimmick in your ear, it'll fool you into thinking there's depth, but the bulk of them not only feel cheaper and less substantive than the old games, often cutting before any meaningful progression happens in conversation, they also exude a level of desperation to just get the thing written and done with so they can move on. And I know I'm projecting. Admittedly, there are more conversations in these games, more characters than in previous entries can interact because of the child-creating mechanic, eugenics mechanic, whatever, that requires many potential mothers and fathers, but it's brutal if you care at all about writing believable characters. The one thing that reflected genuine humanity from the old games, reduced to mass-produced shipping fodder for a burgeoning online audience. And the worst part is, obviously no one cares. Obviously I should shut the hell up, because bank makes right for a company. I'm not even done with this bit. The stories were weird, opened up time bending and parallel worlds, yet nothing too crazy for Dark Dragon God game, but eventually they turned incomprehensible, all about battling some dark evil instead of those far more meaningful excavations into human relations. Empathy. Power. Why did Nintendo normalize the bimbification of the war story? And it does bug me. And to Advance Wars, what's going on? Oh, give me a break. Advance Wars couldn't keep up. A certain dev saw what Fire Emblem was doing, saw how it was succeeding, said, I can't do that with Advance Wars. Dirt nap. Whoa! Disgusting. Gameplay as the focal point wasn't enough. Characters babbling and content as the focal point, universal praise. I feel like the genre passed me by some time ago. I am but a curmudgeon with opinions, though they come from a good place. I'm genuinely afraid that a series I liked a lot at one point wants to manipulate a subset of buyers, the endlessly horny and deprived, the shipping fiends, but I don't get to say stuff like that and think I'm exclusively correct. Those people already told me to f in the comments, and more power to them. Haven't played Three Houses yet, and frankly, I don't know if I've got the Constitution. But it's such a rich library of games, the kind of stuff you can experience 20, 30 years later and think, you know, this is pretty good.
But I got it for free.
And it's not like Nintendo has a monopoly on the genre, even if their IPs are market dreadnoughts. Lots of people get a kick out of making their friends and watching them die in XCOM. I was pleasantly surprised by the Department Heaven lineup of Yggdra Union, Gungnir, and the genre-adjacent Knights in the Nightmare. Seriously, some of the most solid strategy games I've ever played. Valkyria Chronicles is still pushing out new releases, and if you haven't tried them yet, coming from older games, they're a really next-gen take on the genre with all the staples enhanced. If you like complications, numbers, and power, Disgaea's got you covered. And the best part of most of these other games I mention isn't merely the gameplay, but the focus on telling a story with substance, with at least some inquiry into the human psyche, some expression of empathy. I'm into the stories, artisan level or otherwise, the little false wars, the combat charades that can, in the telling, capture momentary powerful glimpses into the lives of this sad species. Hey, it's KBash. Special thanks goes out to my $4 patrons, whose names are on the screen. The show's on its way somewhere good thanks to the community's generosity. And special thanks goes out to my extra generous patrons who are 1307, Azero, Basement Dweller, Beverage Crisp, Boha, Brandon, Brios, Cal, Caesar T, Chief, Chris A, Cody Golden, Corgi the Lad, Couch MOBA, Crack Stuntman, CW Glassworks, Kyle Lapreed, Dakota Storm Jones, Dara, David Castillo, Den Het, Don't Worry About It, Dylan Coffee, Exa, Frankenstitch, Guard Corey, Gucci Plant, Hatsune Miku's Crack House, Harkaj, Huey, Ingenious Clown, Jason Lasky, Jaden, J-Daz, John Weber, Joke Frog, Justin Sherry, Keith Myers, Kelvin, Creighton, Crazy Dark Chocolate, Latrix, Laundry Mom, Lego Sid, Liam, Lon, Lucas Phoenix, Magical Madman, Marcules, Marmato, Maximilian Wolfgang Niver, Milky Moo Official, Mr. Dodongo, Miles Burris, Nito Torpedo, Old Burgle, Only LK, Pink Peacock, Quasar McDougal, Quillworth, Quinn, Reggie Rodriguez, Ricochet Frame, Sagitrash, Siren Smells Good, Salty Smasher, Sekai no Awarida, Seamus Nerd, Shod, Simp God, Special Children, Spooky Grimalkin, Sublime Cataclysm, Super Sandwich Guy, Tenken Zephyrborn, TFY Lex, The Salt Knight, They Call Me Gambit, Thrips Heartrop, Travis Edwards, V01156, Venom, Viewers Like You, Vic, Walter Taggart, Waposa, Weeb Trash, Well Shit, Yay Kundo, Zachary V, Zanaso, Zane the Impure, Zane the Pure, Zed Slayer Gamer. If you'd like to help support the show and make it even better, check out my Patreon. We've got all kinds of goals and lots of rewards in store. Stay tuned for more. KBash out.